How does it feel that you have cleared your mains exam?
So I feel relieved, sir. After that, a bit happy. After that, I feel responsible about the further process, so that I can get a favorable result.
Okay, Yashwant, your DAF mentions about a number of things. But before I start asking you questions from that particular area, could you tell me something about yourself, starting from your family, your education, your current status? Yeah, just go ahead, please.
My name is Yashwant Kumar Reddy. I am from Kurnool district of Andhra Pradesh. My father is a retired government teacher. My mother is a homemaker. I have an elder brother who is pursuing his PhD at Pennsylvania State University, USA now. Further, I have completed my graduation in computer science and engineering stream from JNTU Kakinada with a gold medal. After that, I have joined Indian Oil Corporation and worked there for 2 years as information systems officer. After that, I have cleared Group 1 examination of APPSC, got 3rd rank, and was allotted Commercial Taxes Department. As of now, I am working as Assistant Commissioner of State Taxes at Kurnool.
Okay. All right, very well. So, okay, just tell me, what are your eating habits, veg or non-veg?
Sir, I am non-vegetarian, sir, but I will be eating both veg and non-veg, sir. It's not like I eat only non-veg. I eat both.
Okay. Is there anything which you find is good in being vegetarian over non-veg? That as the theory goes about.
They generally tell that vegetarian people are not contributing to this violence on animals that are being killed for making as food for non-vegetarian people.
A number of studies, both from BBC and some foreign nationals and Nature General, have spoken about being vegetarian would reduce the carbon footprint on the globe as a whole. Do you believe or do you think it is true?
I'm not completely aware of that publications what you are told, sir. But with my limited knowledge, what I think is, for vegetarians, if there are more number of vegetarians, we need to grow more number of crops. Sir. Growing more number of crops in turn means that the CO2 emissions will be reduced, because the crops in turn will be taking that CO2 and will be giving O2 in turn. So it might lead to reduction of carbons.
Okay. Your optional is anthropology.
Yes, sir.
And you are a tech graduate, computer science.
Yes.
Any particular reason you found this attachment with anthropology post your graduation in tech?
Before selecting the optional, sir, I have zeroed out on few optionals like sociology, anthro, and mathematics. Among all of them, I have found the syllabus of anthropology was relatively simple, and I was able to relate the terms of syllabus into real life, sir. As I was also a working professional and I have to prepare it along with my job, I thought taking anthropology will be a bit of relief for me, and I can sustain that preparation.
How do you define race? Human race?
Yes.
How do you define human race?
Yes, sir. Race is a characteristic where we divide people based on the physical attributes. Based on physical attribute, that the people who are in a single race are more similar to each other than the people who are in the other races, based on the physical attributes.
Biology has proven that there is no such theory called race of human beings.
Yes.
So how is anthropology substantiating that claim? Now, what is your take on that?
Yes, sir. So the main concept is, sir, biology is proving that this concept of racism is wrong, sir. The attribution of intelligent characteristics and all those based on the physical attributes is wrong. But with particular question to the race, sir, race is just a difference in the physical characters, sir. I mean, the kind of characters are based on various factors like ecological factors, cultural factors, etc. In areas like Africa, the temperature is very more. So to protect the skin from them, the melanin content is more, so that the skin is dark. Whereas in areas like USA and other European countries, cold is more, so the skin is a little bit reddish in color, sir. So the race is not, when we talk about the race, sir, the race concept is a valid concept, but racism is not a valid concept, sir.
But biologically, it was not racism. They said that race is not the theory. It's just an ideological construct.
Yes.
Biology says so.
Yes, sir. Biology says that the physical attributes are developed only to cope up with the situations, to better adapt to the environmental conditions over there. And those physical attributes have nothing to do with the intelligence quotients and all, intelligence factors.
So you mean to say that race is a geographical manifestation on a human population?
So there are multiple factors, sir. Among them, geography is one such factor, sir.
How much environmentally aware are you? Do you consider yourself?
Sir, I know quite few things about environment, sir, like the changes that are happening, the steps we need to take and all. Not very technical things, sir. I know generalistic things.
Okay, tell me about the role of ocean in the changing climate that we are facing, and how is ocean changing with respect to changing climate, and then how this relationship is vice versa, like environment is changing because of change in its ocean, and then ocean is changing because of changes in environment. Can you relate these two?
So because of various anthropological and human reasons, sir, the ocean is changing. Like we are seeing sea level rise, we are seeing change in the salinity of the oceans, we are seeing changes in the ocean currents also. It is in turn impacting various things like rainfall, etc. So in turn impacting the environment, sir.
Recently, Netflix came out with a movie come documentary on fishing, overfishing. Have you seen that?
Sorry, sir, I haven't seen that, sir.
What is deep sea trawling?
Yes. So as far as I know, sir, I didn't know technicalities about that, sir. But deep sea trawling is a kind of mechanism where the fishermen fish at more deeper levels, sir, than what the traditional fishermen can go with their nets. They try to put a net over there and they drag that net by using some mechanized boats so that they can get higher quantity of fish, sir.
Recently, American Navy, US Navy, it conducted a FONOP operation. FONOP. What is that, and why it became a kind of a diplomatic discrepancy between US and India?
So US Navy has conducted an operation in the exclusive economic zone of India, sir, near Lakshadweep. The reason US Army is telling that they are ensuring that the open seas are open to all, the seas are open to all. But the contention of India is that, sir, it is under the exclusive economic zone of India, and any other nation that is passing through that zone should take prior permission from the India. Now they are putting it with the official delegates, sir, with US. They are trying to raise their concerns, sir, as we have seen in the newspapers.
Why US doesn't consider it a concern?
Sir, the main reason US is claiming is that our exclusive economic zone, what India is claiming, is more than what it should claim. So US in turn is considering it as global open ocean, so that everyone will have the right to navigation. And US is trying to claim that right to navigation, sir.
Okay. What is United Nations Convention on Law of Sea?
So there is UNCL Convention on Law of UNCLOS, what we call that. Based on that, I am unable to remember the specific things in that convention, sir. But overall, it is for ensuring that all the open seas are open to all. Every nation has right to navigation over that open seas, and further, for every nation there is a dedicated exclusive economic zone where they can only claim the resources and all. And if any other nation is passing through that exclusive economic zone, they need to take prior permission, sir.
Is this based on the law of sea, or this is Indian law? The one which you just said, is it based on the is based on the text of law of sea, or is it India's India's conditions while ratifying this United Nations Convention on Law of Sea?
Sorry, sir, I am unaware of that, sir.
Okay. Have you heard of this Ever Given?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
So Ever Given is a goods carrier ship that got stuck in Suez Canal, sir. Because of that, the traffic on both sides got stuck. It resulted in huge loss to the logistics of various companies worldwide.
Do you think human beings have raised high stakes across the globe, like such choke points, and then the entire human economy or survival at some point of time may be at risk?
Yes, sir. It is true that there is over dependence on few points like Suez Canal, sir. Now Israel has come up with a plan to build a artificial canal as a substitute to the Suez Canal, sir, to avoid such kind of problems in the future. So we need to explore the alternative measures in all the cases to reduce the dependency.
Okay. Have you heard of Kra Canal?
Sir, I have read it, sir, but I am unable to remember the exact specifications.
Okay. Well, what all artificial canals are created across the globe? Can you name them? There are 4 of them, most importantly.
I am unaware of that. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Tell me, how Indian government, the response of Indian government vis-a-vis COVID situation worked in ensuring the COVID penetration, doesn't go or doesn't harm the population as a whole that badly as it affected US. So what all steps government of India took while controlling this COVID situation in India?
So initially, the government has focused on tracing of people who have come from foreign areas, sir, and all those were put in quarantine. Further, the next immediate step was placing a lockdown, even though cases were very limited, so that there is enough time for government and medical facilities to ramp up their infrastructure, etc. Further, informational education campaigns were taken to provide people with sufficient COVID responsive things, what they need to take care of to enforce social distancing, etc. Further, we have also sequentially we have also tried to improve our capacity of manufacturing PPEs, etc. These are all the steps we have taken, sir.
Okay. COVID-19 as a situation brought in front of us a lot of opportunity areas as well. Like we did not have enough medical support. We were at almost at no place when it came to have our infrastructure vis-a-vis preparing those PPE kits and then other vaccine support that we later on got only after having got into kind of support or joint venture with a British company, right? Do you see that any such pandemic or any such disruption that ever happens in future would be not really good for India again, because we are again not prepared, are we?
So the major issue the pandemic has posed us is that we are not self-reliant, sir. We are depending on multiple other countries with respect to the manufacturing of vaccines or manufacturing of medicines, etc. Due to pandemic, a situation was created where we had to focus on our own infrastructure and create everything on our own. India is focusing on many schemes, sir, like Make in India, etc. So that the dependence on other countries reduces. The government has also started this Atmanirbhar scheme so that the manufacturing and other sectors of India become more self-reliant. So as the steps are being taken, sir, I think if any such situation comes in the future, India will be less affected because it is more prepared, sir, as it has seen the effect.
India is prepared compared to how it was post-COVID, obviously with medical terms, but there are certain aspects of medical care which are highly neglected at the same time, like mental health. This is one area. Psychological care, we have like one doctor, one psychologist per lakh population, some kind of data is there like this. In fact, there are a lot of problems on psychological ground, palliative care, geriatric care, where the efforts should have been raised. India falls back. What can India learn from the world if there is any such precedent, still in existence? If there is any, you have to give me one precedent that is still existing vis-a-vis these all situations, and what India can learn from them, if you know about it.
Sir, I couldn't get the last part of the question. Sir, any precedent means?
Precedent. Any example across the globe, if there is any, where governments have worked on these areas? Is there any example like this existing? And if yes, then what India can learn from it and has learned from it?
Yes, sir. I am unaware of specific examples, sir. But I came with this specific situation in US, sir, where most of the costs are being bared as part of the insurance schemes, sir. The penetration of insurance is very large in USA. So in India also,
mental care, there's this mental issue related thing I'm talking about.
Okay, so only space to mental issue.
Because see, we are already working on our physical infrastructure. We've got hospitals, we've got ventilators, we've got PPE kits, we've got far more trained medical and paramedical staffs these days, right? And then Government of India even made an amendment in MC, and then in the entire medical fraternity actually rose up against it when this research and surgery related things were given to Ayurveda doctors as well. Right. So in a way, Indian government is trying to create more registered doctors, definitely on the lines of what WHO has provided. But on the psychological, on the mental health side, what India has grounds to cover. For that, is there any example across the world that India can emulate?
So regarding the first part of the question, sir, what steps India should take? First of all, we need to make sure that people get aware about their own mental illnesses. Sir. We need to create an awareness, because in India, the basic issue is, although people are facing with such kind of issues, they take it as very normal things. Sir. They doesn't see it like a separate disease that needs to be treated. So we need to create awareness that such kind of disease, such kind of mental issues also has treatments, and we should make sure that people will approach registered practitioners for the treatment. Further, we should also make sure that the stigma that is associated with mental illnesses,
tell me the example that is available. I got the point.
Sir, I'm unaware of any specific examples, sir. Sorry.
Okay. All right. What are your hobbies?
Sir, I am part of this We Glory initiative, sir, that helps state civil service aspirants. Apart from that, I watch professional web series. Web series on.
Okay. Anything outdoor or indoor game that you're interested in? No.
I'm interested in cricket and volleyball, sir, but I have played very less. Sir.
You know about volleyball?
I know general basic rules, sir, not technicalities, sir.
There's a 2.5 step that we take in volleyball. You're aware of it?
No, sir. Sorry.
Okay, let me ask one funny question. Which is the smallest 4-digit number having at least 3 digits?
Smallest 4-digit number having at least 3 digits. Sir, 0001.
0 is the same digit. You should have got 3 digits, and that has to be 4-digit number. So 1 is a 1-digit number. Anyways, we'll get to the answer later. This was all from my end. All the best, and over to Shweta.
Hello, Yashwant. How are you?
Fine. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Yashwant. So, starting from your very basic district, tell me 3 characteristic features or 3 main features, 3 attractive features of your district, and convince me to come to your district. What are the 3 major features of your district which will convince me to come and visit that place?
I think it's a lot of change, ma'am, because earlier Kurnool was suffering from this faction and all. There was a lot of violence. But in recent times, the situation has changed very much, ma'am. The district has focused on its own unique points like renewable energy potential and all. Lot of industries are coming. So employment is also coming. The situation is changing, ma'am. So Kurnool can be an example of this change that we can bring in India. The second thing, ma'am, Kurnool is also famous for many historic places, ma'am, like Kondareddy Burju, which is seen as a symbol of the national movement of India. Further, we also have Belum Caves, ma'am. They are the second biggest caves in Indian subcontinent. Horizontal caves. And further, apart from that, ma'am, we also have Nalamala Forest and a place called Ahobilam, where for visiting the temples, we need to trek all through the mountains, ma'am. It will be a very different kind of experience because in the path, we will also be visiting very many waterfalls also. So it is both a difficult and also very enriching trek, ma'am. So I think these three things should attract you to Kurnool.
Okay, so what are the three major challenges that your district is facing, and if you become a DM of that particular place, what will be the solution that will be provided by you? So first the three challenges, and later on the solution.
First challenge is, ma'am, the literacy percentage of Kurnool is very less, ma'am. It is 60%. It is less than the average percentage of AP, which is 65. Further, the next challenge I can think of is, ma'am, although there is rich mineral and renewable energy potential, the kind of usage is very less. And the employment opportunities are also very less. Because of that, the third challenge is there is a lot of migration from Kurnool to nearby metros. That is the biggest challenge. Those are the three biggest challenges. And the next part of the question, ma'am, if I become DM of Kurnool, my focus areas regarding these things will be, firstly, I'll make sure I'll try to attract the industries by creating awareness about the kind of mineral resources or the kind of unique geographical features of Kurnool, like a lot of non-cultivable land that is available for renewable energy and all. And I'll also try to make the youth of the district employable by several skill development schemes so that they can be employed in the industries that are coming to the district. Further, to improve the literacy, ma'am, I will make sure that the quality of education is being improved by ensuring attendance of teachers, ma'am, first of all. Complete attendance of teacher, and also improved pedagogic methods like virtual teaching, play-based teaching, so that the general interest on education is improved among children.
So you also mentioned about commendation certificate that you got as a prize or something. What was that commendation certificate about?
When I got the commendation certificate as part of the Republic Day celebrations 2021 for my performance in present role as Assistant Commissioner of State Taxes.
So you are already working professional, right? And while working, we face sometimes pressures are there from your family side, pressure of something which is going on in your life. But most of the time, the conflict which you face is from your office, from your professional work side, right? So, in case of such conflicts, first of all, tell me the challenges that you have faced till now. From how many years you are working?
In the present position, I am working from almost 3 years. 3 years.
Okay, so 3 years, it's a very big thing, right? It's a very big time to know about the challenges. So tell me the challenges that you have faced in this particular job scenario, and how did you able to overcome those challenges?
I could think of 3 biggest challenges, ma'am. First thing is I have joined at a very young age, ma'am. I was 22 years old when I joined this department. Most of the officers in our office are more than double of that age. I have faced this problem of acceptance, ma'am. They are not ready to accept me as their boss. So I had to make sure that I am competent enough to take decisions and competent enough to drive the circle. That's the first challenge, ma'am. The second challenge is lot of procedures in the office, ma'am, they were disorganized. If I am asking any file or any kind of reply, they are not able to get it. There was a lot of dependence on a few people, ma'am. Although there are a lot of manpower in the office, the dependence was very more, ma'am, much more. The third challenge I could think of, ma'am, in the starting time, it was every day we used to be facing a new kind of problem, a new kind of situation in GST. We are unaware of how to deal with that, what solutions we are having. So every day was a learning experience, ma'am, in the initial days. These are all the three challenges, ma'am, I could think of.
So, what were your steps that you took? First, you were because on the acceptance issue, then later on the disorganized way issue, and from your learning experiences, how did you able to cope up with these challenges? Because then only you would have moved forward and you would have kept yourself motivated to be in the job, right? So, what were the steps that you took?
Regarding the acceptance issue, ma'am, what I learned is if I am able to expose myself as a competent person, then everything will fall in place. So that what I did is, ma'am, I used to discuss act with them, the provisions of the act, what steps we can take, what we are not concentrating here. If they are getting any specific case to me, I used to mention all the possibilities. I used to discuss with them what you used to do daily, what you used to do earlier, what are all the options available now, what are all the implications if you go with a specific option. So they got a kind of impression that this person knows things. This person has learned about the act and the rules. So that problem of acceptance has stopped, ma'am. So the second problem, ma'am, disorganized things in the office. What I did is, ma'am, I made a gradual steps, ma'am. First thing, earlier they used to use own Gmails, ma'am, for sending notices and all. So the replies also being sent to their own personal Gmails, officers' personal Gmails. The issue I have faced is if I am asking for any specific reply, that is not in the public domain. I need to go to some other officer's private mail. I need to get that. So I talked with the head office IT team, ma'am, and they told that they will create a NIC mail, that too based on the designation, not based on the name. So I made that NIC mail for all the officers and staff, ma'am, and I ensured that all the communication with taxpayers will go through only this NIC mail. After that, ma'am, I made use of the Google spreadsheet and Excel to monitor work in the real time. What I used to do is I used to keep a list of all the defaulters who have not filed returns. Then I asked them to fill the details. What is the time, on what date they have given the first notice. After that, 15 days, have they passed the assessment order or not? I used to monitor with that the help of that spreadsheet, and I used to speak with them. So with these little steps, I was able to bring some kind of order in the office.
Okay, being a CTO, commercial tax officer, you are on that position. So, being a CTO, you might be having some data about the tax filling in the nation and the tax reforms which are taking place. Where do you feel, what are the main reasons why the taxes are not being paid up to the level? We have very less percentage of people who are paying the taxes, right? Being such a big nation, we require a lot of things. Even the government machinery is not able to do up the jobs just because the taxpayers are not paying. There are a lot of exemptions which have been given. So what do you think? Where does the problem lies? Why the people are not paying taxes? Where is the root? What are the root causes of those problems? What do you think?
The first thing, our tax base is very less. We are unable to bring all the people who should pay tax into the tax net, ma'am. The second thing is, ma'am, we are more dependent on physical enforcement, ma'am. I mean, the use of manpower in enforcement. The use of technology in enforcement is very less. As we are having limited manpower, the kind of taxpayers we could enforce is very less. So the cost benefit of evasion is more for taxpayers. So the chances of getting caught are more for taxpayers, ma'am. And the third thing is the third thing, ma'am, we're unable to, the use of these technological means like artificial intelligence, big data. We are unable to use them to the fullest potential, ma'am. For example, I'll give a small case, ma'am. The person is using e-way bills continuously, ma'am. Purchase e-way bills, but he is not getting the real material, ma'am. All those were fake e-way bills, but he is claiming ITC based on that. If we have put a check in the NHA toll plazas to check whether the particular vehicle was passing through the toll plaza or not, on the day he has got that material, then we can easily say that that is a fake purchase. So that kind of things are not being happened. They are happening, but at a very slow pace. These are all the reasons I can think of.
Okay. Okay. So you talked about big data, and you have some achievement also in that big data thing, right? First, tell me the very basic question: what is big data according to
Simple definition of big data, ma'am. The data that cannot be processed using traditional database management systems. That is called as big data, ma'am. It is quantified by the volume, the velocity of generation of the data, and the variety of the data.
Okay. Okay. So being a technical graduate, then working in a government, working in a department which requires a lot of transparency and which is one of the area where this whole usage of big data is going to become a boon for that sector particularly. So, being an administrator, when you will be joining the administration and being a technical graduate, how do you see the usage of big data as a boon to the administration? Give me three advantages of big data which can be utilized for maximum governance and minimum government. And it should be very specific, three specific reasons, three specific advantages.
Regarding general administration, ma'am, or any specific department?
No, regarding general administration.
And the first thing, ma'am, we can ensure that the beneficiaries who are getting benefit from government schemes are the real beneficiaries. We're having a lot of databases like income tax database, electricity bills database, commercial rent receipts database, and also municipal tax receipts. Based on that, we can estimate the level of income they are getting. And we can ensure that the benefits are going to only the persons who need them the most. This is the first thing I can think of, ma'am. And second thing, ma'am, it is specific to education sector, ma'am. The basic problem in education sector we are facing is lot of dropouts. Using big data, we can track, we can predict the people who are more likely to be dropped out, ma'am, based on the specific socio-economic factors, the factors of the employees of the specific school, etc. We can predict the probable dropouts, and we can take precautions, ma'am, so that the dropouts are reduced.
And the third point?
Yes, ma'am. I'm thinking of, ma'am. Just give me a.
Yeah.
Ma'am, health sector also. Through big data, we can make use of this telemedicine initiative, where we can automatically process the kind of symptoms the patient is telling, and the symptoms will be matched to the kind of database we are having, the common symptoms for diseases and all. And based on that, we can recommend the tablets they need to use. And we can link them to some kind of special.
Okay. So, basically, when we talk about this big data, and if you have heard about with power comes more responsibility, right? Now, we have a lot of big data with us. We are processing the data, we have the volume, we have everything. But there are a lot of ethical issues involved in this. If you see the privacy concern, the persons are not they are not involved in taking up the data, how their data is being used. Recently, the WhatsApp policy and everything. So, a lot of things are coming in this picture. There is a web kind of thing which is being created, right? So, how are you going to deal with these ethical issues? How are you going to convince the people that if you are giving their data, it is not being misused by the concerned authorities? So, what should be the way? What should be the way out to collect the data, but it should be used responsibly? What can be the way out for that?
The biggest drawback of this big data thing, ma'am, is it is invading the privacy. Because what big data does is it will unleash the secrets in the data. In that secret, some secrets might make us uncomfortable. Some secrets might intrude our privacy. So we need to make sure that we are using big data only for the benefits, and we are not intruding into the privacy of users. For that, ma'am, the steps we need to take is we need to make sure that the data is being collected in an anonymized form for all analysis and all, so that we cannot relate back to the owner of the data, the person. For all the analysis government is doing, if chance is there, we need to focus more on anonymized form of data, ma'am, so that these privacy concerns will be reduced. And further, ma'am, we have come up with this new data protection rules. In that, it is specifically mentioned that every user needs to give his explicit approval for collection of data for any private entity. So while collecting that consent also, ma'am, the companies should mention the specific things for what they are collecting the data. I mean, the kind of usages they will be making based on the data to improve our shopping experience or to make some kind of analysis of their sales, etc. So government needs to make sure that the data is being used for only that particular purposes. They are not exceeding the purposes they have stated in front. And further, ma'am, we also need to provide this option of erasing the data from people who have collected it earlier, with or without our consent. Because in many cases, what happens is they'll push us to give this consent. Otherwise, we will not be able to utilize the service. So for utilizing the service, we will give the consent, but later we will realize the repercussions. So we need to have that option of taking back our data. I think these things will make sure that the big data is being used in a responsible way.
So you talked about V-Glory and providing some kind of help to the state
Right.
civil service people. What was it basically about? How were you helping the students in that pertaining to that issue?
Ma'am, the initiative was started by people who have cleared Group 1 in 2018, ma'am. A group of people. We used to conduct mock tests. We used to speak with aspirants one-to-one. And we also made some video lectures and all, based on the important topics and all. My specific role, ma'am, I wrote a blog post for them, for the V-Glory initiative. And I further used to write model answers for the questions, for their mock test papers. And I also guided 2 to 3 aspirants personally, ma'am.
Okay, so what's your take on the coaching culture which is taking place so much in this whole civil services examination, state services examination, JEE preparation, everything? I think the coaching is becoming one of the part and parcel of students' life. So, are we lacking somewhere that we require an additional platform? How are you going to justify this coaching culture in any scenario in India? Is it justifiable? Is it required?
In my personal opinion, ma'am, I don't support coachings at all, ma'am. I haven't joined any coaching in earlier. I have joined only one coaching during my +2, and I have failed in that exam. So I'm completely opposite to the kind of coaching culture. The first issue is, ma'am, they are creating the fear of missing out, ma'am. If you don't join us, you'll not be able to do this. We will provide that kind of insight, this kind of insight. So they are making the aspirants feel that you are invaluable, you are not valuable. You will become valuable only if you join us. The kind of fear they are creating, ma'am. The next thing is, ma'am, there will be a lot of doubts with the aspirants, ma'am. Earlier, what used to happen is this kind of digital revolution is not there, ma'am. The kind of information now we are getting on the internet, etc., that was not there earlier. So these coaching industries were dominating. But now what is happening is everything is there at our fingertips, ma'am. We can access any kind of data. If we are having any doubt in a specific issue, also we can just Google the word. We will get a lot of things on that specific issue, ma'am. So the thing we need to make sure that in the specific coaching issues, ma'am, the type of hyper competition they are creating, that needs to be reduced, ma'am. And the main issue is also because of the expectations of parents. In fact, parents are pushing children towards coachings because of the societal standards, societal perspectives, etc. So parents also need to make an honest conversation with their children, what they want from their life, etc. And further, they also should have the realistic expectations. They should not push them. The same applies for this coaching institute also, ma'am. They should focus on everyone equally rather than just focusing on few people for their ranks.
Fine. Okay, so you have mentioned about professional fiction, web series of professional fiction. What can you just elaborate? What professional fiction are you talking about here?
It is a kind of web series where the major focus is focus is about the professional aspects, ma'am, like the kind of procedures in the profession, the intricacies, the kind of challenges they face on a daily basis, how they are able to overcome those challenges, etc. For example, regarding the doctors, ma'am, we are having Grey's Anatomy. Regarding corporate lawyers, we have Suits, like that.
Okay. Okay, so these web series are becoming a sort of addiction for the people nowadays. Especially during the lockdown period, we saw that a lot of people went into this whole Netflix, Amazon Prime, and everything. Don't you think so that it is becoming an addiction for the people, and it's basically killing the outdoor energy of the people, making them addictive, sitting on the couch for the whole time, binge watching these shows and all? Don't you think so that it is bringing lot of laziness in the people? How are you going to justify your web series watching in this whole aspect?
Ma'am, it is true that the web series are reducing reliance on outdoor activities, ma'am. We need to make sure that outdoor activities are also part of our life, not just web series. And the addiction of web series in recent lockdown also has reduced the physical activity we are doing. So I will not support this web series in this specific aspect, ma'am. In many of the web series also, ma'am, they specifically showcases about this sports, the importance kind of. So watching that web series also, we will get a kind of motivation to pursue those things, ma'am, the outdoor things. It is not just if you are watching web series and all, it is also a kind of motivation, a kind of relief. So there is a lot of life learnings from web series also, ma'am. But the physical activities are also equally important, ma'am. We need to focus on them also.
Okay. Okay, my last question will be from your anthropology subject. During this whole pandemic scenario we are going through, the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat is coming into picture. M.N. Srinivas was one of the thinker whom you might have heard about. He gave the village study thing, right? How relevant is his studies in the present time period about the village scenario that he created, or about the village study that he gave, and in this present scenario of Atmanirbhar Bharat, how relevant are his understanding be present in today's era? Is he still relevant in terms of rural sociology, rural anthropology, in terms of the village studies in this whole present pandemic era? What's your take on that?
Ma'am, specific to village studies, ma'am, what M.N. Srinivas told is, in Indian villages, there is vertical solidarity and horizontal solidarity. Vertical solidarity between people of the village, and horizontal solidarity between people of various villages belonging to same castes, etc. So it has created a kind of interdependence among all these villages, ma'am, due to various kind of exchanges, etc. And he has also given concepts like Sanskritization, man, where people are ascribing for some kind of cultural change. And relating, so I am unable to relate that with this Atmanirbhar, man.
Okay, you are not able to. Basically, Atmanirbharta means that you are not depending on the outside areas, but you are depending only on your these things, right? Whatever things which are being created at a local level. No issues. So that was it from my side. Thank you. Let's move to other people. Thank you.
Hey, hi Yashwant.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. So Yashwant, I'll actually go a little deeper into what Shweta ma'am was asking. In fact, what you had told her. You said that things were not as good in Kurnool before this, right? And now things have started picking up and things have improved. So, can you explain to me what exactly was wrong and how have things improved? What has been done to improve that?
Kurnool is a drought-prone area, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
There were very limited employment opportunities for people in earlier time.
Okay.
So what happened is this factionism developed. violence between people of various factions, the leaders recruiting people to them to spread this violence, etc.
Okay.
That used to be very high in earlier times, ma'am.
Okay, and how have these situations been contained, and how has the situation improved now?
Ma'am, regarding to the specific drought issue, ma'am, now the district is focusing on more horticultural crops, ma'am, with technological means like micro irrigation, etc., so that the demand of water is low, and at the meantime they are getting good returns also, ma'am. And further, the district is focusing on livestock development also.
Okay. And what about the other social issues, like what you were saying, goons being,
Yes.
What about that aspect?
Ma'am, mostly in recent years, ma'am, few industries were established in Kurnool, and also employment opportunities have started. People started moving out to various metros for employment. Youth realized that the violence because of faction is affecting their lives, and because of the excess scrutiny by media and lack of support from politicians, general increase in law and order situation, the kind of impact faction leaders could create, ma'am, it has also reduced because of the transparency in allocation of mines, allocation of liquor shops, etc. The kind of power they are having reduced, ma'am. So people have moved out of their clutches and they are pursuing employment opportunities, ma'am. Now.
Okay. Another thing that you mentioned was that the education percentage in Kurnool is much lower than is fairly low as compared to even Andhra Pradesh's average, right? So,
yes,
what again? Similar reasons for that, or is there any other specific reason why education percentage has been low? Same reasons?
There is no specific reason, ma'am. The general reasons only.
Okay. And so, what is being done? How would you propose to improve the education? This thing, you have mentioned a little bit about it when you were discussing with Shweta ma'am, but can you elaborate a little more on that?
Ma'am, first we need to increase the reach of education, ma'am. Increase the reach of quality education, and we should also make sure that enrollment increases.
Quality education. How do you define quality education, and how do you work on increasing that reach?
In my opinion, quality education means the education which is making student ready for the future, ma'am. Giving him sufficient knowledge so that he is ready for the future.
Okay.
Ready to take up the opportunities being provided.
Okay.
To ensure this quality education, ma'am, first thing what we need to do is we need to make sure that the attendance percentage is good, ma'am. Attendance of both teachers and students. After that, we need to take care of the capacity building of teachers, ma'am. Most of the teachers, they are not conversant with English also, ma'am. So we need to make sure that teachers are very well versed with all the subjects. Further, we should focus on the initiatives like virtual education, digital education, etc., ma'am, play-based learning, etc. Further, we should also incentivize attending to schools, ma'am. There is a scheme called Amavodi in Andhra, ma'am, where mothers are given 15,000 rupees if the attendance percentage of their children is more than 75%, ma'am. It is a kind of incentive.
15,000 per month or 15,000
per year. If the attendance percentage is 75. So it kind of incentivizes sending children to school.
Okay. So again, when now that you've talked about women being paid money, so there's a certain debate on whether we should include a housewife's work in the general economic growth of the household, etc., etc. And so, do you think so? There was a talk of sorts about a woman taking money or salary for doing a homemaker taking salary for taking care of the household. So, what is your take on that?
Ma'am, the kind of responsibility a homemaker has, or a woman taking care of the home has, is very immense, ma'am. We cannot give any kind of monetary value, monetary substitute to that care. I think instead of giving monetary consideration to the kind of care, we should give more love and affection to the ladies in our home, to the women in our home. We should stand by them in case of issues. We should support them. We should respect them. We should make sure that we are acknowledging the efforts they are putting. So I think
Just
instead of
so monetizing also has to do with a woman's economic independence, right? When, as an individual, when somebody starts getting money for whatever they do, they start feeling more independent. There's some confidence that comes in. There's some independence, financial independence that also comes in, obviously. So saying that you provide love and affection and everything is one aspect, but then how do you ensure that a woman feels that financial independence as well, which is very important for overall growth of any individual?
for having that financial independence, ma'am, if the woman wants to pursue some kind of livelihood activities like handicrafts, etc., we should support that, ma'am. To make them independent, to make them stand on their own feet. If they are not having any such opportunities, then giving some part of the income the house is earning for personal needs of the woman, so that she doesn't need to ask for each and every of her expense to the house head. That is also a good step. That is also a good step, ma'am.
Okay. Then the next question I want to ask is about so, like, I think a couple of years ago there was an incident of encounter. Some Disha rape case had happened, right? And there was a lot of hue and cry about the encounter that had happened, etc. So, in fact, in 2015 also there had been an encounter with sandalwood smugglers, where around 20 people were killed or something like that. So there has been a discussion around how encounters have been normalized in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, in this entire region. There's a culture of normalizing or encounter killings per se. So is it what is your take on these kinds of encounter killings, and what do you think? How should these things be managed?
Ma'am, it is said that justice delayed is justice denied. So for quick justice, they are doing encounters and all. But it is also true that justice hurried is justice buried. So in my personal opinion, ma'am, these encounters is not at all good, ma'am, because there is specific division of powers between police and judiciary, because police cannot decide on the fate on a case. They can just investigate and they can present the facts to the judiciary, so that judiciary can take an informed opinion, ma'am. The situation that is happening because of lack of confidence on the criminal justice system, people are demanding instant justice, ma'am. So our steps, ma'am, should be to ensure that the criminal justice system as a whole, the functioning of police, the functioning of judiciary, the speed in which the case is being disposed of, we should focus on improving them, ma'am, so that people also will feel that if this goes through traditional judicial mechanism also, you will get justice quickly only. We need, yes.
So, if you were an IPS officer of, say, your own district, okay, how would you manage such situations? Say there is a similar case to the Disha rape case, and it has a lot of media attention. There's pressure on you to ensure that the situation gets that you pacify the situation very quickly. So, how will you manage that?
Ma'am, as the SP of the district, ma'am, dealing with this case, my primary responsibility will be doing a unbiased investigation. Until and unless...
How do you ensure that? How will you ensure an unbiased investigation?
Ma'am, the kind of media glare, the kind of pressure it will be putting, it will be very limited in time span, ma'am. So my main focus will be on getting the kind of proofs, the solid proofs through which we can prove the conviction, ma'am. So I'll focus on getting the proofs. I'll focus on building up a building up a correct diary, case diary, so that no detail is being missed. I'm unable to go into technicalities, ma'am. I'll ensure that all the steps according to the law are being taken and the case is presented to the judiciary, ma'am. I'll not take law into my hands. Regarding pacifying the people and all, I'll give them update. I'll try to give update about the findings of the case, ma'am. That we are finding solid evidences. Like there is no issue to, there is no need of worrying. This will be decided in the judiciary also. And if possible, I'll insist on a fast track court, ma'am, through some formal means.
Okay. So in India, there rapes have been the whole rape culture has become very rampant, right? All over India, there talks about this. There's so much in the news about how many rapes happen in India every few hours. There's a rape, etc., etc. So, having said that, what do you think? Why exactly is rape culture growing so much in our country, and why is nobody able to do something about it?
Ma'am, the reasons I could think of the present rape culture in India, ma'am. First thing, in most of the people, there is a kind of misconception that they own women. They are bigger than women. They are higher than women. They objectify women.
Okay. And why is that happening? What's the reason for that?
It depends on the specific upbringing, ma'am. The kind of societal situation we are in.
Okay.
That, ma'am, we are also stigmatizing the victims, ma'am. There is a kind of stigma that's associated with the victim, so that many people are not coming forward and fighting for justice, ma'am. Even though the victim is a woman, we are trying to blame her only, ma'am. We are not trying to blame the real perpetrator.
Okay. Cool. Anything else that you want to add to this situation, this why exactly is the rape culture growing, and why are we not being able to do anything as a society on the whole? We understand rape is bad. We understand it's a bad thing, right? Nobody says that. So why are we not being able to do anything?
Ma'am, I think regarding with this specific issue, ma'am, the change should start from the home, and it should start from every home, ma'am.
Okay.
If we start sensitizing our own children about gender issues, about the kind of issues being faced by women, what is the specific role of future citizens to ensure that women will have a dignified life, they will be free from all this kind of violence. We need to start building up these things from the childhood itself, ma'am, so that both the children will stand up to kind of challenges in the future.
Okay. Can you give me an example of one kind of a conversation that a parent should have with a kid when, say, suppose there is so in school, maybe kids are teasing a particular girl. The boys in the school are teasing a girl. And so how, as a parent, supposing you're a parent and you have to explain it to one of the kids, your own kid, that why is teasing a girl or, commenting on a certain girl bad? How would you do that?
Am I the father of a boy, ma'am, involved in the issue?
Yeah.
Ma'am, first of all, I will try to explain him that how he will feel if the same thing happens to his sister or his mother.
Okay.
If other person does same to his own sister or his mother, how he will feel? Definitely, he'll tell that he'll feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll explain that the lady whom you have teased, she is also the sister of some other brother like you. she's also a daughter of a parent like me. As a responsible boy, it is your duty to ensure that you respect women.
Okay.
Not just respect everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Yashwant. That would be it from my side. VP sir,
Thank
over to you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. So, you're right now working as Assistant Commissioner,
Yes.
Tax, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then you must be having tab on economic affairs, whatever decision that government is taking related to Indian economy, right?
Yes. Little bit,
What
sir.
is PLI? What is PLI scheme?
So it is a performance-linked incentive scheme, sir, where the manufacturers components are given incentives based on the production, sir, to ensure that the incentives are being given after increase in production.
But don't you think that more than working on increasing production, we should think about increasing consumption?
Yes, sir. It is also true, sir. There needs to be some demand, so that the production also, there is a scope for production also to get increased. All these things are interlinked, sir. Increase in consumption and increase in production. So government needs to focus on increasing the consumption levels also, sir.
Has there been any decision or policy decision taken by Government of India to increase consumption?
So consumption specific to any particular product, sir?
Any product, any area, or on a broader scale, any decision that is taken by government to increase consumption?
So government is reducing the percentage of loans, interest rate on loans. Further, it is also following many direct benefit transfer schemes so that people will have more money. Further, it is also reducing the income tax rates so that the disposable income available with people, which they can use for consumption, being increased.
Okay. Have you heard of Quad Group?
Yes, sir. Quad grouping, quadrilateral group.
What is it? Yeah, what is this Quad Group?
Sir, it is a regional grouping of India, Australia, US, and Japan, with the objectives of ensuring rules-based international orders.
Is this a military alliance or just a civil alliance?
Sir, it is it is general. Sir, there are some military initiatives also, sir, like the recent Malabar exercise. But I don't think it is specifically a military alliance, sir.
Should India form a military alliance like Quad to contain China or to attack China or to act on China to take back its Ladakh and eastern Arunachal area?
Sir, I think rather than just a military alliance, sir, the kind of alliances that India is focusing on now, using that if we are able to improve the economic situation of India, and further if you are able to improve the general support India is getting from other countries, then with that we can put more pressure on China, sir, rather than a small military alliance.
Why India is having a strained relationship with all its neighbors? India doesn't have good relationship with any of its neighbors. Why is that?
Sir, with few of the neighbors, sir, we are having border disputes. With few other neighbors, there is a situation like the neighbors are feeling India's steps towards them as a big brotherly attitude, and they want to diversify their means so that the dependence on India reduces.
Carry on.
But further, in some areas like Myanmar, Bangladesh also, we are having internal security issues, sir. So with all the neighbors, sir, we are having specific issues.
Okay.
Because of long border and long porous border.
Okay. India bought 36 Rafales, right?
Yes.
Should India go for another 36 Rafales?
Sir, for answering the question, we need to analyze the needs, sir, first of all. What is the present state of weapons that India is holding? And what is the potential of the weapons? And what are the benefits we are getting? Based on all the analysis, we need to take a decision, sir.
Okay, that's all from my side. We'll start with the feedback now. And I'll come back in the end with my feedback.
Sure, thank you.
Yashwant, so after having gone through this entire conversation which you have had with so many panelists here, so right, regarding a few areas where I had asked questions, so I'll come on them first. There are a few factual errors that you have committed vis-a-vis when I talked about the importance and role played by ocean in the climate change. So I felt maybe in a Ziffy you had to make. So there you committed a few mistakes. You should have talked about and mentioned the ocean acidification a little bit, because that is where the entire problem comes in. Because growing amount.
I should have used acidification.
Yes, you said ocean salinity is increasing. You mentioned about salinity, but ocean acidity or acidification, which is the main cause of a lot of problem, because ocean is getting acidified because of increasing amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that is getting absorbed, and this entire cycle is creating ocean more acidified. And then that's when the absorbing feature of ocean will decrease, and then the acidified nature will erode all the animals that we have. Phytoplanktons would be less effective. A number of chain reactions will actually wreak havoc. Now that is one area. Then we talked about a little bit around. I even actually tried to relate this particular topic from a recent Netflix, which is Seaspiracy. There's a recent Netflix series, a movie, I guess, right? So you can just have a bit of idea from there. Yeah, I mean, if you're interested, since you said the documentary is something which you're interested in looking at watching. So that is one, and that is two, in fact. And more or less, I would generally say that information level needs a bit of boost. You need to work on the awareness part. Like these all areas where I asked that whether how informed you are with respect to environment, and these were open-ended questions. So the statement that you should have used should have been a little more moderated, so that tough questions you can evade in case it was required, and good ones you can take, right? And then I talked about this thing. I mentioned one point about this acidification. What was one point I talked about? Do you remember what all questions I asked?
Sorry, it was a long interview.
Anyways, the point I asked you a question about how this non-veg veg contradict this dichotomy works, and whether this being vegetarian is going to help the environment in long run. So there is a report by BBC, and there was a study conducted by National Geography as well, where they have said that the methane consumption, the methane production that happens because of bovine, the meat production that happens, the amount of water that it requires to create 1 kg or 1 pound of meat is way more than creating or producing, the equivalent amount of cereal, for that matter, right? Staple foods. So agriculture this entire process or this entire culture that happens on the land has other invasive features, has other challenges to take care of, its own set of. But when you try to sort of rear animals and then have them or feed them, and at times you even culture them, farm them, only to fatten them up, right? Only to increase the meat part or the protein part or the fat part, right? So there are other ethical angles which I'm ignoring for the time being. But yes, there is an environmental factor, because bovines are also attributed to 20% of methane that is generated, or more than that, right? So this methane production is related to, which is a high potential greenhouse gas, which ultimately is non-sustainable. So that is one. Okay. Other than that, I found your observations on most of the topic very prompt. Although you were taking some time before you reacted, which was good. But still, I find that you work a little bit on the content part, the recent awareness part, right? And the last question which I asked was about mathematics, smallest 4-digit number having at least 3 digits. So it should be, first of all, a 4-digit number. So it should be beginning with 1. That will make it 4-digit minimum. And then the smallest 4-digit number having at least 3 digits. That is again a 2-digit number. That is a 4-digit number having at least 2 different digits. So you need to have 3 different digits. So 1002 would be the answer. Okay. And the last question which sir asked you about, you remember what sir asked you the last time? Maybe sir asked you one last question. Okay, so he asked you about this feature, this economy, this China, and then some point on that, right?
Yes, sir. Should we be a part of a military alliance to contain
military
China?
Alliance or not? Yes, he asked you Quad, and should we be part of military alliance or not? Obviously, this was not the question, although maybe sir will give you a feedback, because I had a different question in mind. So that was all from my end. All the very best, Yashwant. Over to our next observation.
A small doubt, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, you have asked this question, what is your level of awareness in environment? So what would be a good answer, sir, for such kind of questions, open questions?
In case it is asked to me, I would say I am aware, but definitely those technical terms may not be in at that time. But I'm aware, and I'm pretty sensitive to climate change and environmental aspects regarding our stay and sustainability. So you can be moderate, and you can then let the questions be short to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. All the best, Yashwant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Yashwant, so how are you feeling now? Quite satisfied with your answers?
I hope yes. I was a bit confident.
Okay. So yes, the point is that you are confident, you are taking time, answers are quite mature. So just keep it up, and just smile. Things should keep going, right? Because it enhances your personality. Fine. Okay, now coming to the specific questions which I asked you. So I asked you about 3 strengths of your district, right? Now, when you are answering such questions, it should be very convincing answer. You live in that particular district, right? So you started on a very general issue, providing employment and all that. Your first point should be started with your historical perspective, which you gave later on, right? And this I found in many of the answers. Your priority should be, maybe I may not be able to hear all the 3 topics. First point only would have you would have given, and I would have switched over to the next question, right? So what you have to do is you have to prioritize. When you are thinking, when you are taking up the points, prioritize your points, right? That is the time what you are taking for thinking. Put one point in front of the panel that it gets attracted to. Okay, now further things I don't want to know. This is the thing which I wanted to, right? That will save the time. That will provide you more questions also. Fine. Okay. The same thing happened when I asked you about this whole scenario of taxpayers and why is it not happening. You gave an example on that. That example would have come first. So that will show that you are already in the field. You are providing a lot of things. You are there when these things are happening, right? So this is the point which I'm focusing upon. You have to prioritize your points when you are answering. Right. The same thing which happens in the mains exam also. Here, it's just that a conversation is happening. So your first impression will be the last impression, right? You cannot change yourself. Okay. So your example. Then about big data, when I asked you about minimum government, maximum governance, right? Now over there, you would have given a much better answer. Currently, seeing your position, seeing your amount of knowledge which you carry, the big data thing you answered in a very general way. Okay, because you have won a competition in that, you are very well aware of the things. So when I'm talking about big data, and from the administrative point of view, it should be like, the main focus should be the governance thing. So transparency, citizen charter, then what kind of benefits will it provide to the government and to the people. You have to start from the ground level. to the people, what kind of advantages it will bring to the society, what kind of advantages it will in any organization, to the government. This whole thing should go in that particular way, right? Hope you are getting what I'm saying.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Then about the coachings, when I asked you started on a very well-mannered tone, right? That you are against the coaching, you haven't attended. That later on you shifted your way. Ki, okay, coachings are providing so and so. Take one stand. You can't be, yes, coaching should not be there, and yes, coaching should be there. You can't say in that way, right? If it has to be there, your point should be justified. If it should not be there, your point should take one stand in such questions. You can't give a middle way in that.
In that question, ma'am, I was saying what are all the steps we need to take regarding coachings. I was adding a few.
Yeah, but you started on a tone that it should not be there, and then later on you shifted that okay, it can be there, right? So that should not be the way. If you are providing the solutions, fine, but provide in a way that it should not look like that you are changing your stance. Yeah, right. Take it. Okay, then professional fiction mein you took both the sides. That was very good answer. I found it very convincing. So keep that up and find out more professional these things, fictions. Watch them, and then you can be able to generalize them. Okay, fine. Then in anthropology, that was not the answer which was you were supposed to, right? You talked about Sanskritization. In the current scenario, Srinivas' study is becoming more relevant, right? Because now we are shifting more towards the village backward linkages from the villages to the urban cities. We are moving towards the urban mission and everything. So it is becoming relevant in the current time. Right, so that should be your answer. Yes, in the current time, it is becoming more relevant. I mean, so just go through the studies again, and you will be able to find.
I'm not remembering, and that's the issue I got.
Yeah. Oh, it's okay. No issues. So just go through. So all the best. That's it from my side.
So just a few small things regarding this whole women empowerment and equality wala the entire conversation that happens around it. I'll suggest that you read up a little more on it, on, how exactly are you supposed to frame your sentences. The thing is that certain things that you're saying, so say like when I talked about, a homemaker being paid a certain salary for the work she puts across. So it'll be good if you can actually deep dive into you started out with they need our love and affection, which is not what a salary means. A salary essentially means financial independence. And that is where I had to push you later, that, it is about. So kind of considering that you do take time to, give your answers, you take a little bit of time and then you come to your answer, right? It's how you've always worked. So especially with that particular angle, always try to come off try to just say the right things, at least in the first sentence. And that's what I think Shweta also told you, right? Prioritize. There's a particular manner of talking which is called the reverse pyramid, okay, which is a consulting term. So what they kind of do is they give the solution first and then they start explaining. Okay, so the good part about that particular angle is that you've already told the people that this is the solution. If they're convinced, now they're interested, because they know, and so it'll be easier for you to explain also. Even if you fumble, then you wouldn't. People won't lose interest because they already know where you're getting to. So it's a little easier when you start talking like that. Read up on that. It's it's called reverse pyramid. Okay, do that. That will help you with all of your answers, regardless of whatever is this thing. And then plus even on the rape angle or on the encounters angle. So when I started asking you about encounters, the one thing you said was that happens because justice delayed is justice denied. So encounters happen. Don't. I mean,
they justify encounters because they think that justice is being delayed.
No, you're essentially acknowledging that AP and Telangana, we're We tend to do it. It's okay.
No.
No, don't. So always kind of whenever you're trying to explain these things, be a little more diplomatic on that aspect. कि मतलब kind of either have the data in hand कि हाँ this many होते हैं, agreed that it is more than the national average. It may be because of this. It may be because of this. But never kind of say the without any numbers or without any particular this thing say कि हाँ yeah, we are good at it. We good at this. We have guns. We use it. As in, don't say stuff like this. Okay. So that
I
is
think
one.
for that kind of questions, if I would have said that we should not support encounters in the starting
No,
of the
no, no.
answer. Would
No,
have
no,
been
no. First, I asked that is encounters a way of doing things in Telangana and AP, right? So that angle you're supposed to address first. That
okay.
right. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. And then, as an IPS officer, when I told you that I'll put you in the place of an IPS officer and an SP there, and how do you take care of that? Don't say anything like I will not take the law in my own hand, because that is the obvious thing. That is something that is very obvious, right? As an IPS officer, you will never say I will take the gun, shoot that person in the right here. No, you cannot do that. You cannot definitely say that in this interview, right? So don't, right? Don't say anything which is definitely obvious. You're as an IPS, you're not expected to take the law in your hand. You're definitely expected to go lawfully, but try to, and this is an emotional question, right? So the first and try to emphasize on how you will deal with the grieving family, because that's a very important angle. So whenever you're asked a sensitive question, always look at who's the underdog in the situation or who's the victim in the situation, and always work on addressing that. Trying to pacify the situation essentially means सबसे पहले addressing the grieving party or the victims. So again, same thing. Try to frame your answers better. Try to work on that. And body language. Sit straight, na. Don't slouch on your chair, because then that looks like you're kind of, or maybe the chair is that like that.
It is
But
of revolving.
yeah. So, but kind of try to sit straighter, because
Yeah.
otherwise it will make you look like you're not serious. You're just chit chatting, and although we want you to have a conversation, but we don't want a chit chat, right? Chai pe charcha is not what we're looking at. So that is another thing. Apart from that, yeah, everything else, just you're what, 25, 26, right?
25 man.
Energy, more energy. You're very young. You're very, very young. Okay. So with this, when you're at this particular age, and I do understand that, you're in a position which is assistant commissioner and everything. So a certain manner comes because you have to deal with people who are twice your age or more. But even then, try to maintain that young person vibe that you should have at 25. Okay, you're sounding very, very grown up for 25. So try to relax a little, smile a little more, like Shweta also told you, right? Smile a little more, relax a little, loosen up, and then start having the conversation. But think faster. Like when you're talking about things, and again on that non-veg aspect of things, just do one thing on the non-veg aspect. Watch considering you like documentaries. Netflix has a lot of documentaries on the environment, especially. So try going through those. I think some documentaries by David Attenborough and all are also there. Go through that, and you'll be able to answer a lot of such questions.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to the environment. So in case that's one of those things, work on that. Yeah. Apart from that, everything's okay. Take care. All the best, Ashwin.
I asked you just three questions, and I wanted to test just two things. What differentiates interview from mains is that your awareness and your application. See, in mains you write theoretical aspect, more of theoretical aspect, because you have to cover so many areas in just few words, 150 words, 250 words, that's it. So, but in interview, you try to showcase how much you can, fill in with application part, right? So I asked you 3 questions. The importance of quad. Can it be military group? Or should it be military group? You said, no, it should not be used as a military group. Fine. This is what you call the policy part. Now you need to fill why with practical problems. Now, say if you form Quad group as a military group, including Japan, Australia, and America, tomorrow, if America engages itself, say in Syria, India would be forced to go there and wage a war. So it might happen that to contain China, India might get into unnecessary wars across the world. This is one facet. I'm just trying to give you example as how exactly you have to bring application part into your answer, and that is important for your interview.
Okay.
In mains part, you talk about theory part more, policy theory more, but the moment you come to interview, you make it more practical. That yeah, it should be done. Then why? If it is not to be done, then because of this. Because otherwise, we will have to go everywhere waging a war on behalf of America, and we will be creating enemy. Why to do that? You've got one enemy. We can contain that enemy. Why to create 100 more? That's the way to showcase your awareness and your thinking brain, right? Then I asked that India has got strained relationship with all its neighbor. You give the right answer, but again, theoretical part, that with everyone we have got what you call a border dispute or something. Now go little deeper and you'll realize that most of them were once part of a bigger India during British time. So it was the heritage. It was a legacy that is creating trouble, and we have not been able to resolve that. That shows that you have given a thought to a problem related to which only theory is available, but you have gone a step ahead to bring to a logical conclusion. Because see, unless you don't have a logical conclusion, how exactly would you be able to give a solution? Yes. Being an academician or a student and being an administrator, what is the difference? Academician and a student can leave a topic inconclusive. I mean, bringing about many facets, but still not saying anything. But an administrator has to take a decision, and he has to be conclusive. So you have to be yes or no. And when is it tested? It is tested in interview. So there, we talked about theory part, but then on a practical point, how exactly should I be able to reach to the decision?
Solution.
Since you are in administration, you know that noting is initiated, right?
Yes.
So at SO level, you must be getting a noting initiated at SO level. It must be reaching to you. You must be sending it, either you must be taking decision there or you must be sending it to deputy commissioner and above, right?
Yes.
But every stage, a decision or a preference is mentioned. If you take a decision, you write a decision, right?
Yes.
Or if you send the file up the order, you recommend that this is the condition, this should be done or this can be done, right? So how would I test your decision making capability? When you give answers which has got application part, right? Now come to the third question. I asked you about, should India go for 36 more Rafale? You said the right answer, that India needs to evaluate its requirement. Now again, this is subjective thing, good for mains, but think about yourself, you taking this decision. Is it, if your SO writes that India needs to take take into account all its requirement and emerging situation, Would you write anything, or you would just send back and say that please substantiate that, right?
Yes.
Wouldn't you?
Yes.
So you'll say that recently there was a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, in which, I'm just giving you an example, drones were more lethal and more effective. Considering that we are into 21st century, you were talking about big data, AI and all. Considering that fact that now conventional war is paving way for high-tech wars in which drones are being used, why should India go for another 36 Rafales? Why not India should first evaluate whether drones can be good for India? I'm just giving you a clue. I'm not saying this is the right answer. What I'm trying to point out, that since you are an administrator, you understand that at every stage, at every level, a decision has to be taken. So when you are in the interview, what they would expect from you, that you give a conclusive points. Okay, I've asked him this question. What does he think? It's like, you're writing a noting for your superior, right?
Yeah.
So that would actually make them feel better. Okay, fine. This guy has given a thought. Practically, he has thought about it, and now he's saying this. You understand that?
Yes.
So that what you have to incorporate, and that would distinguish your answer from your mains answer. You understand the difference?
Yes.
In mains you write something else, and in interview it's like you're noting. At every stage it's a decision making, right? So that's all from my side. If you incorporate that, everything is fine.
Thank you.
Okay, best of luck.
Thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civils Daily.